What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me is my great co-host, Fede Perez. And guys, again, here we are. It's mid-May. Happy 214th years old to Paraguay, because it was their Independence Day a couple of days ago. It was also Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all the Paraguayan mothers out there who are listening or are fans, or just in general, because it's been a big week for Paraguayan football as a whole, Fede, because obviously we have Copa Libertadores and Sudamericana matches, really important games for a lot of these Paraguayan teams as they really talk about their futures, or really look forward to their futures in 2025. We also have action of what's going on in the U17 tournament happening in Colombia. Can Paraguay make it to the U17 World Cup in Morocco? We'll talk about that in a second. And, obviously we got to talk about the big deal that happened in this week in this country for the first time ever, the FIFA Congress. The FIFA Congress happened yesterday. We saw all the big digs from football, from Gianni Infantino, from Alejandro Dominguez, from ex-players as well. You saw the likes of Samuel Eto'o, Arsene Wenger, Andrei Shevchenko, and many others coming to Paraguay, coming to the country to talk about things that are going on in FIFA. So it's been a really busy week where the center of the world has really been, or center of football, you would say, is coming into Paraguay. So Fede, I mean, I'll go to you because you're right there. It's been a chaotic week, I would say, with everything that's going on the field, off the field. It's nonstop, but it's great because it shows that Paraguay are really getting the attention that it deserves in this part of the world.
Hi, Roberto. Hi to everyone listening to Guarani Vision. It's great to be back for another episode. Unfortunately, Raf couldn't make it. He's under the weather. He's a bit sick. We'll let him go for this one. We'll have him back on the next episode. Maybe he doesn't want to see me. Maybe he doesn't want to be with me. No, it's not the issue. He's just a
It's
little sick.
Arsenal. Arsenal has made him a bit
I
depressed.
was not gonna mention that, Roberto. I was not gonna mention that, but yeah, it could be the reason. But as for us here in Paraguay, it's been a very interesting, busy week, just like you mentioned it. Independence Day, Mother's Day, and then the FIFA Congress pretty much happening all together. 5 Paraguayan teams playing, their last opportunities also in Libertadores and Sudamericana. And now I believe we're down to just 3 teams. We gotta say goodbye to 2 teams already. Well, we've already felt like that with the Sportivo Luqueño a couple of games ago. Now it's official for Olimpia also after they lost their game this week. And for Libertad, it's qualification. So congrats to the Libertad. Cerro is just right there. Cerro Porteño is just about to do it. If not, they'll head to Sudamericana also. But at least, for 3 teams, also Guarani in the race in Sudamericana, they still got an opportunity. So it looks like the international year is going to move on for our Paraguayan teams in the second part of the year. Last 4 games also in the opportunity to see if Libertad can make it real, if they can clinch the first title in the Paraguayan League. And obviously, following everything that has happened this week, just news coming one after the other one in this FIFA Congress. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go. Just mainly because of the whole distance thing between the players, the board members, and the press. You're very far away from them. You can barely have any contact with them. So unless I was gonna do a special coverage or something like that, I didn't feel motivated to go, even though it's a huge event. Obviously, I mean the amount of security that was around the Commonwealth building, everything that was just around this whole FIFA Congress. I mean, you could really see just how much money it moves. More than $50 million coming into the country, from the hotels and everything that this Congress moves. But there's other big news also for Paraguay as we're heading into that 2030 World Cup. Paraguay is more and more in everybody's mind, and everybody's talking about us. And it was great to see a lot of FA presidents and even political people from all over the world coming for the first time to Paraguay, and see just how ready we are to host them and to have their countries eventually coming and playing here. And there's other big news. I mean, you're even hearing Alejandro Dominguez saying, "Hey, we want a bigger World Cup. We want more teams in it." So it's all about just news coming one after the other. Roberto, I don't know where you want to start with, because it was just not the FIFA Congress. It was there was a lot of things going on this week.
Yeah, it almost felt like a referendum in a way, trying to talk about everything that's been going on and trying to say, okay, let's do this. And Infantino said yesterday about, the fact of expanding the World Cup, which could be a possibility. And he said that on quote, like, every idea is a good one. Like, we're not going to expel any of them. But I think it's the question of, seeing how this all works out. Like you said, the kind of the the preparations. We got 5 years, literally exactly 5 years until Paraguay's supposed to host that first game in 2030. So is the country ready? I don't know. I think we all have our doubts about that. We can leave our discussion for quite for a future show, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot been going on. Like, I think we'll start with the Libertadores in just a second, but we also have to mention the U17 Women's Championship, as Paraguay, and special shout out to Florencia Cáceres, an ex guest on the show, and also on this team as they look to qualify for the tournament in Morocco. They are currently in the final stage with 3 games left to go. Right in that position right now. If the tournament ended, they would qualify for that tournament. But we have to obviously wait and see, as they have games against Peru, Colombia, and Ecuador to close it out within the next week. So we'll keep an eye on that, and hopefully we can celebrate another qualification for Paraguay to a major FIFA tournament. That would be great to see them both in men's and women's, seeing them qualify for U17 and U20 World Cups. And so, yeah, it would be huge for the country. So we'll leave it off to that. And hey, by the way, man, we're already heading into the qualifiers soon. We got a couple weeks until that game in Uruguay and then the game against Brazil. Carlo Ancelotti's Brazil, we could officially say. That's the big one in Sao Paulo. He'll make his home debut. But I do have that fear of Ancelotti. Maybe he saw that job and thought, yeah, I'll join. But then he has that fear of like, wait a minute, I have to face Gustavo Alfaro in my first home game. I don't know if he's maybe a bit more frightened about that or playing the Champions League final with Real Madrid in the past. But yeah, that's going to be the big test for him heading into that next week, and for us as well, as we try to officially qualify for the World Cup next month, if all the results go the way. But that'll come when it'll come. We still got a couple of weeks there. We got to obviously see who's going to make that list of the convocados for Gustavo Alfaro. And yeah, it's going to be a really hectic rest of the month, and then obviously heading into June with the qualifiers going in. But let's go into the Libertadores, because obviously, like you had mentioned, we have 3 Paraguayan teams performing in different aspects of the competition, all of them getting really different results. Literally, all 3 of them getting different results. I guess we'll talk about the one team that I think will be the shortest one to talk about, just because their tournament ended so early, and that's Olimpia. Olimpia, as you said, Fede, are officially out of the Copa Libertadores after their 3-2 loss to Peñarol, and it's a shame because Olimpia actually started very well. They took the 2-0 lead early on with Lisandro Lopez scoring, and then obviously Ivan Leguizamon. But then in the second half, Peñarol struck 3 times in a span of 22 minutes, I believe. So it gave Peñarol the advantage of officially qualifying for the next round, either a Sudamericana or a round of 16. But that means Olimpia will not have enough points to catch any of those teams, especially as they head into their last game against San Antonio Bulo Bulo. So, you could say really it's another failed year for Olimpia, at least in the midweek. I mean, we still got to see what they do in the Clausura and the Copa Paraguay, but at least in this first 6 months, especially after all the momentum that came from them winning the Clausura, they fell flat on their face.
And they've had their opportunities to pick it up in Libertadores, right? These last couple of games have been their opportunities, and they have not been up to the standards of an Olimpia team. Where people are expecting for a huge team like Olimpia to go through, but they just didn't get the results. They tied against Vélez last week, and now they lost against Peñarol. That leaves them totally out of the Libertadores and any opportunity they had of making it also to the Sudamericana. And the game itself looked really weird to me because it started out really well, and it usually wasn't the way with this team. I mean, usually this team picks it up in the second half. With this coach, at least, he's been showing, a back line of 3, which has been really weird for a lot of fans because he didn't have time to work on that. And even the midfield has been very uncomfortable with that. You've heard players also saying we're under this, manager change and he's trying to play differently. We're still not getting adapted to the new style. So it was a talking topic going into this game, but I believe Olimpia felt really comfortable in those first minutes. It was a typical Libertadores night in the sense that it was a very important game for both teams. So you saw that reaction from Peñarol in the second half, and Olimpia just couldn't maintain their stuff. They were never in control of the ball as the second half started, and Peñarol just came running right into them, and they scored pretty much those 2 goals to tie it up right one after the other one. And the third one was just a beautiful, fantastic goal from Remedy to take it away in minute 73. So you had still enough time to see if the team was going to react as they went into this game without Derlis Gonzalez and without Richard Ortiz. So you were thinking, okay, it's going to be Benedetto's opportunity to show up, start this game, and it was his opportunity, but he's never scoring. 12 games, he has yet to score with the Olimpia jersey. He's one of the players that has just not been up to the standards. There, we can make the list to see if which players are going to be cut even out of this roster because Olimpia is going to have to shorten this roster after they're not going to have Libertadores, they're not going to have Sudamericana, they're only going to play local football now. So they're definitely going to have to do something about this situation because this is a roster that's just taking way too much money and they have not been up to it. And then you have all the players that I thought it was their opportunity and they just didn't show their stuff, like Marcos Gomez. This is a young player that we're still waiting to see if he can be really that starting player in the midfield for Olimpia, as that spot is always for Richard Ortiz. It was his opportunity in the game and he didn't make the difference. He wasn't that player that could handle the ball. He wasn't the aggressive player that Olimpia needed to pick it up either. And even though you have Gaston Olveira, their most important player, their goalkeeper, their captain, their best player last season, coming back in these last couple of games, it hasn't been enough. The defense has just never been stable. They're always getting scored on. And in the second half, when they needed to hold on to that 2-0 lead, they went up to it and the team just fell apart. You saw Leguizamon, who was a very important player in the first half, not doing absolutely anything in the second half and even coming out injured because he's been playing so much. So Olimpia just didn't have enough, Roberto, from the player side, from the football standards, and it's Peñarol who are still in the run in this group for Olimpia. It is the end of the road, and you're seeing criticism all over the place. I mean, that spark in the Super Clásico, that win against Cerro Porteño is long gone because people had expectations in this Libertadores and the team really fell short. And I don't know how this new coach is going to pick it up because ever since he took over, Fabian Bustos, he's still not showing anything more than that Super Clásico.
Yeah, and that can only go so far. I think for Olympia's, obviously that is the expectation for them to win, but at the same time, man, you got to pick it up and those are two games out of what, 24, 22 games in the whole season, 23. So, you can't do that. It's only a short minority of what you can provide and of course do well in the international competition. So, yeah, I don't know how Olimpia can bounce back from this. I think, well, there's only one way they could do it is to win something, but even then, is the team good enough for that as after what you've been seeing? And, I can only fear that it could probably get worse for them unless they view this whole year as, yeah, you know what, let's just, it's been so weird with Palermo. Let's just do as much as we can for the whole year and start afresh next year. Do you think that's the mentality that this Olimpia should have, or is it just a case like, no, we need to go strong as we always do in Copa Paraguay and obviously in the Clausura that comes up?
I think Bustos needs to be very smart about picking his players and picking the right ones going forward, right? I mean, I think we're seeing a lot of experienced players just having way too much time and being way too important in this team and not making the difference. I'm talking about Derlis Gonzalez, Richard Ortiz, who were not available for this game in particular, but did not show up either in the other big games in Libertadores. Maybe it is the end of the road, the end of an era in that locker room for certain experienced players. I want to see how he handles that situation going forward. I'm talking about Fabian Bustos, the manager of this team. And obviously the young players that are coming about. I mean, Axel Alfonso has taken over in defense. He's starting to play regularly alongside Licha Lopez, the Argentine. So, there are certain young players that are starting to have their moments, like Luis Abreu. Also, ever since Fabian Bustos took over, he's given him minutes all the time. He has yet to start officially 2 games in a row, but he's getting that confidence. Hugo Benitez, also, who is important at a certain point for Palermo, he hasn't been able to score lately, but he's always on the list. He's always being called up. So for me, I think it's about picking the right young players and trying to refresh this team, trying to reset this team as they weren't available to be a better team after being champions. You were waiting for that. You were champions at the end of the year in 2024. You needed to be a better team this 2025, and they just weren't able to evolve into that better team this season. So I'm waiting for them to pick it up in the second half of the year. Olimpia need to do it because of their tradition, because of their history, and you're definitely going to see a couple of signings, maybe also because when they get criticized like this, there's need to be some reaction also from that sense. So I think there's going to be a list of players that are going to be cut, and I think there's going to be new players coming into this locker room, maybe even big names that are going to come into this locker room and see if Olimpia can be champions in the second semester. They're pretty much out of the run in this Apertura. It's up to Libertad, Guarani, and Cerro Porteño as we're heading into the last 4 games. So for Olimpia, it's about strategy and what are they going to do in the last 6 months of the year, the way I see it, you know.
Yeah, no, totally. I think it's a reasonable take to have, and I think we have to wait and see what they can do heading into the rest of the year. As we switch gears now with another team that also is really looking to really sweat it out, I would say, to qualify, it's Cerro Porteño. Cerro Porteño had to go all the way to Sporting Cristal. I was proven wrong. I think you were as well, Fede, with this game, and they ended up getting the win that they needed. The 1-0 win. It was a really suffered win. Obviously, you had Arias in goalkeeping as well, Iturbe with the goal. But they got the result that they needed. They got the result that they needed. And with Palmeiras' 2-0 win over Bolivar yesterday, that puts Cerro Porteño in a really good spot to be, as you said, qualify for at least the Sudamericana playoffs. And they're basically in, assuming that Cristal doesn't score a bunch of goals on Palmeiras at the Allianz Parque. I think you can safe to say that this game for Cerro Porteño, at least spiritually, they are into the round of 16 after what was really a really frustrating start for them, and that they picked it up right when they needed to, getting the points that they needed and the results that had to get them to qualify, and also saving Diego Martinez's job.
They were able to win the game that they needed to win. I would say that, right? Because after losing the Super Clásico, you saw that the team was not motivated to beat Palmeiras and did not have that push that they needed from their fans either at home. So you were not expecting them to do much against Palmeiras. It was kind of expected for them to lose that game. So then this was the game. This was their opportunity. They couldn't wait to that last game to see if they get the 3 points. This was the big opportunity, even to put away, this rival that had already taken points away from you when you played at home. Last minute draw that they got, it was a game that really got away from you. So I think it was a very good opportunity to show that, no, you're the second best team in this group and you're the one that needs to go forward. And I think Cerro really did that. I mean, all the players really stood out. The whole defense, Lucas Quintana alongside Velasquez, Alan Benitez doing his thing. He's been one of the best players this whole season. And then you had Diego Leon also coming in, the defense, the young player that's going to eventually go also to Manchester United in just a couple of weeks, actually. He's been getting his game time these last couple of weeks. Apparently, the coach has seen him, focused and that he can bring some stuff to the team. And he actually played really well on a defensive role, not going forward that much. Something that he's been criticized that he can't defend that well. He actually had a pretty good game in that side of what he needed to do. And then you had Carrizo doing the difference with the pass with Iturbe, who showed up again in an important game. He has done this over and over again. When he's healthy, you can see that Iturbe and Cecilio Dominguez are the difference makers, no doubt about it, in this team. But you just need them healthy. And Cecilio Dominguez came out again with a problem, apparently, in his arm. We saw him not with the cast, but he had his arm protected when he came back to the airport. So apparently he's going to be out for a couple of games. This is not good for Cerro Porteño. I don't think they have other magical players like that, but he's going to have to rotate, and obviously he's going to need other players to show up. And for the forwards, it's been a problem not only in midfield but also from the forwards, because most of the forwards in this team haven't been able to stand out lately. So you needed Torres out there, and he got the red card. So now maybe they're gonna have to go with Sergio Araujo. He was a third, fourth option at the beginning of the year, but he's been picking it up lately. He's coming off a brace also from in the Apertura, and he was really close to even getting a second goal at the end of the game when he had a very good one-on-one against Enriquez, the goalkeeper of Sporting Cristal. I thought Cerro was a much better team than this Sporting Cristal in both games that they went up against each other. And I think they just showed that they're a much better team when they play away, Roberto. They feel the pressure when they play at home. They don't feel comfortable playing at home. It sounds so weird, right? But this team just shows their stuff when they play away, when they're not playing in Paraguay. And a whole different chapter for Alexis Martin Arias. I mean, You talked about the national team, and as you were talking, I was just thinking, I mean, what is Alfaro going to do with Gatito? Gatito's not, Gatito has lost his spot in this team. He's not playing lately. Alexis Martin Arias has taken over because he is the better goalkeeper as of right now. That's the way the coach feels about it. And he has really showed up in these last couple of games, maintaining the clean sheet, and he did it again, stopping so many opportunities that Sporting Cristal had. So I think he's ready to be the starter to maintain the job, and Gatito's going to have to wait now. And Gatito is our starting goalkeeper in the national team, but he had a couple of mistakes that I believe now when you're the coach and you're analyzing, okay, Alexis Martin Arias did this and Gatito did this during the whole year. I think Martin Arias is winning, this opportunity of being the starting goalkeeper of Cerro Porteño.
Yeah, I don't think that changes in me personally. I think even Alfaro said like it doesn't really change him that Gatito will be the starter for Paraguay regardless. So I mean, yes, it is a bit worrying that he's not finding that consistent, especially given the fact that this was the move that he needed. Before when he was riding the bench at Botafogo, now he's coming to Cerro where everyone thought, okay, he'll be the starter, he'll get some minutes, he'll be consistent, he'll be in form, and now it's kind of like deja vu again, Fede. So you're kind of like stuck in the sense of like, oh my God, what's gonna happen to Gatito in the sense of like, and you have someone like Orlando Gil, for example, he's doing well at San Lorenzo, he's waiting in the wings. I'm sure Alfaro, as much as he's saying, this is me personally thinking, I can't speak for him, and Fede, obviously you can't speak for him as well, but he might say in public, like, yeah, Gatito has been showing, enough to be the continuous goalkeeper, starting goalkeeper, but man, he must be having some plan B's and C's in case it really goes shit, and like, I can't do this guy. I need to take the effort, and not the effort, but the decision to do something else.
I think he's eventually going to try out another goalkeeper. If this situation just keeps on happening, if Gatito just doesn't play, they've done a mini cycle, I believe, with other goalkeepers from the local league. So they've been looking into young goalkeepers lately. And then you have Orlando Gil, that we talked about him coming in also the last games, he was called up, so he's one of the young ones that's coming about, the ones that are standing out. So they might eventually get an opportunity. But as of right now, we just need to clinch, that ticket to the World Cup, and I think that he's gonna stay with Gatito. He even said it. They asked him this week when he was at a game, and Alfaro said, "No, I'm moving forward with Gatito. He's been doing everything that we need from him in the national team. So he's not, at least from in front of the cameras and in front of the microphones. At least he's not saying that he's going to change the goalkeeper so far."
Yeah, and a lot can change in the next couple weeks, like you said. Maybe something happens. We always have to be. I'm sure Alvaro has to be prepared, especially right now. He even said it like this is the most difficult combo of them all. Heading into this game between Uruguay and Brazil. So we'll have to wait and see. But yes, I think I think it's safe to say Ecuador are going to the round of 16 unless some big capitulation happens either in Bolivia or Cristal has some sort of miracle over than São Paulo. I think it's safe to say that 99% that Paraguay, that Cerro Porteño are going to be in the round of 16 of the Copa Libertadores, which, to be fair, man, it's not surprising when you looked at. I remember our discussion in our when we saw the draw together. I just thought, I was like, they have every right to qualify, and this would be their expectations. And hey, they're done it in a way.
Yeah, and I feel good about this team in Libertadores. They show their grit in Libertadores. They show their best versions. I believe players are motivated, and I like what I've seen from Cerro Porteño in the group stage. Besides the game against Palmeiras, where you've seen a totally different team in a totally different level. Palmeiras is ready for the title. Palmeiras is a title contender, and Cerro just needs to get up to that level eventually, right? They might need to make a couple of signings. They've fallen short, I believe, in the midfield. Gaston Jimenez is yet to come back healthy, and they've had trouble with Morel being out. They've had to use Matias Perez, who was actually a center back in that midfield role position. So, he's had to improvise in many opportunities. I'm talking about the coach and his job, but they might need to bring in better players. They might need to bring players, with big names for Libertadores if they stay in here, and if they face up against a giant or a Brazilian team, they're gonna have to show up much better than they have so far. But for the group stage, it's enough, Roberto. That's what I feel about this Cerro Porteño. When they have Iturbe, when they have Cecilio Dominguez, and if they have a goalkeeper like they found in Martin Arias these last couple of games, I think they have enough to go through.
Well, I think the same could be said for Libertad as we go into Libertad's case, because obviously, they were really close to getting a big historic win in São Paulo at the Morumbi, with Gustavo Aguilar scoring in the 74th minute, but it was Luca who got the goal in the last second to make it a point. But, Libertad are still there. They're in that position. They will qualify to a further round. I don't think, well, actually, they are qualified officially because neither Talleres or Alianza Lima will be able to reach them. So, and again, I felt very much confident enough that they could do it. I thought they were going to sweat it out, but ultimately they didn't. They really showed all what they could with this team, and even for Pato Aquino really getting this position, and you think, okay, is this job too big for him when he comes to the latter stages? But no, he got the results that he needed. Certainly getting the results that now heading into the final game against Alianza, they're already in. Like they have no issue. They don't have to sweat it out for not being able to not qualify. So job well done for Gumarelo to qualify to the round of 16.
Yeah, at the end of the week, we gotta say, right? They're qualified. They made it through. So props to them. They've done a very good job in their group so far. These games against Sao Paulo have been the hardest ones for Libertad, and this one it got a little bit easier because Sao Paulo got a red card kind of early. So you saw Libertad having the ball, having the possession because it did not start out well. I mean, Sao Paulo was really running all over the place. They were getting their opportunities playing at home. I thought it was going to be a nasty one for Libertad, but when it was 11 against 10, it was a different game, and Libertad had the best opportunities. They were even up 1-0 after Gustavo Aguilar was able to score minute 74, but the win got away from them right at the end with Marquez coming through for Sao Paulo and at least making it a tie for them. They are the favorites in this group. Sao Paulo, no doubt about it. But Libertad has shown their stuff. And for Libertad, it was about cutting the streak also. They haven't been able to score lately. So it was good to see them back in celebration mode, at least for that goal against Gustavo Aguilar. I felt the players wanted to get the win to see if they can pick up their stuff and take this motivation also back to the Apertura where they really can't let the title get away from them. At least the first out of the two things that they need to get done in these next couple of weeks is over. They're in the Libertadores, so they can get that off their heads. I believe this team has been trying to fight both things, and it's been really hard for the coach to maintain the mentality to keep them going and to even keep them healthy. I mean, this team has been flying all over the place. They've been playing way too much, and you can feel that. You feel that some teams are really tired when you have Roque Santa Cruz, when you have Tacuara Cardoso, and you really depend on these guys, and they are just right there. Roque is above the line of 40. Tacuara is right there also. It's really hard for them to keep on playing every 3 days. So it's been rough in that sense, I believe, for Libertad. But it's been nice to see other young players also pick it up and have their moments like Lucas Sanabria, like Gustavo Aguilar, Adrian Alcaraz. They've all chipped in these first couple of months to see and to make this possible for Libertad, right? This was what I expected of Libertad, for them to make it through in this group stage, and thankfully we got the first one down, Roberto. They are the first one, the first Paraguayan team we need to congratulate.
Yes, we do, and obviously we have to wait who they would face because they still. I mean, it's a long shot, but they could still technically win the group. Obviously, it has to depend on what São Paulo does against Talleres, and if Libertad could smash a Alianza Lima at home. So we have to see that, because looking at all the other opponents in this whole group stage, there's a lot of tricky teams out there. I mean, you're gonna have obviously your obvious like Racing and River and the Brazilian team. So I'm curious to see what will happen to them and who they would face. But again, we can't really say much until we find out who those teams are. But yeah, I'm sure their minds are really focused on who they get. But I think after getting out of a really tricky group, I think they understand that they can take on most of all of South America and really put up a good fight. I wouldn't say that they would be favorites in many of these ties, but at least they'll give them a good fight. Yeah, that's how I personally feel. I don't know if you feel that way. For Cedro, maybe it might be a bridge too far unless they get really lucky with sort of a good draw if they do qualify, of course.
Yeah, for most of these teams, when you have a long streak of games, it's about maintaining your players healthy. And for Cerro, it was a couple of weeks. You had a lot of players out, but they're coming back right now when you need them, when you have important games. And he's been able to show that rotation also. I'm talking about, the Cerro Porteño's coach. That's why he's getting good results also in the local league, just like he did against Guarani. And Guarani was trying to maintain their team. And now they fallen short in these last couple of games, right? As they faced Cerro Porteño and as they faced Independiente for that first spot also in Sudamericana. This is another team that we're following because they don't have enough to rotate players. But if they have their starting team healthy, they've shown enough to be one of the best teams in this Paraguayan football in these first months.
Yeah, and going into the Sudamericana, because obviously Guarani will have to go to the final day to really qualify. They lost against Independiente in a game that really they could have gotten a result there and felt comfortable about qualifying, but now they have Nacional Potosí right there. They got the 3-0 win against Boston River the other day. Boston River obviously eliminated. So for Guarani's case, they need to get the win and hope that Independiente are not able to snatch anything from Nacional Potosí. Well, at least that ends in the draw to see them qualify for the round of 16, because the knockout stage playoffs are even as more difficult, especially considering that they could end up with a Libertadores team right there as well.
Yeah, totally. We've always felt good about this Guarani team, especially when you have obviously your top scorer out there, Fernando Fernandez, when you have Willy Mendieta, but they were both out of this game, at least from the start, right? So I felt like they were gonna have some problems in that sense, and they didn't create much really against Independiente. Independiente really handled the ball just like they did it also in Asunción. It's just that in that game in Defensores de Chaco, you had Gustavo Vargas coming through in the set pieces and making the difference in that game. But I think in both matches, Independiente has been the better team, and they got the result at home, just like they needed to depend on themselves going into the last game. For what I need, it's about making your job, doing your job now at home against Boston River, which is something that I think is doable. I think they're gonna win, but now you depend on what happens with the Independiente, right? Against Nacional de Potosí, which has been a rough team for everybody in this group. I think they can still maybe get a tie from Independiente, and what it could be one of the surprises in the last game, heading into that first spot. I don't think they've deserved that first spot. I think they fit in more in that second place, and I want to see them in playoffs. To be honest with you, but it would be wonderful if somehow the results fall into place and if Guarani can clinch that first spot. I just think this team hasn't had enough fuel. When they needed the rotation, when they needed other players to step forward, they just haven't found enough. They have a very interesting young squad with a lot of players having their moment this year, at least their minutes in the international stage, which is wonderful to see that from Chiqui Arce, who is always looking into the young players to put him out there. But as of right now, I think it's more fitting that second spot for Guarani, especially after this loss against Independiente. A draw would have been great, Roberto, but unfortunately, Guarani comes empty-handed after going to Avellaneda.
Yes, yes, they have. And I think they can feel more motivated now that they can get the win against Boston River, because at least that will boost them enough. But you do feel that it was a missed opportunity to get something over there in Argentina.
Yeah, especially because this team really did look tired. Some of those midfielders have been playing a lot. They can't come out of the team because Chiqui Arce just doesn't feel comfortable with so many young players out there. He even tried one of the experienced players that he has in this roster, like Bruno Piñatares, the Uruguayan, but he put him against Cerro Porteño, and he had to take him out right away. So there are certain players that are not up to it as of right now. So it's going to be interesting to see just how Guarani can handle this streak of games as they're trying to maintain their life in both competitions. They want to fight this Apertura also. They had a very interesting run to get close to Libertad, and their attention is all over the place. And it's really hard to maintain your stuff on both competitions, Roberto. We're seeing that the teams that are trying to do it, they're the ones that are having the hardest time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they close out this last game and see if they can do something and qualify. They're in, which what matters, but or about to be in. But yeah, I think it'd be better for them to go in and be a bit more with opponents of their par, if that makes sense. So we'll see what happens. We obviously have to see what's going on in the Apertura because, like you said, we're right into the final days and we still don't have a winner, Fede. It's crazy. 36-point Libertad leading the way. Guarani right there with 32. Cerro Porteño there with 21. Olimpia there with 29. So technically, you have a 7-point gap with 4 games left in the season. Again, Libertad lost again. They lost to Sportivo Luqueño. Guarani lost to Cerro Porteño. So, that's like, okay, now Cerro are in. Like, are you crazy? And looking at these games, and I don't know if Olimpia have that chance to do it even after everything that's been going on with them. But is Cerro now in this race? Is there a miraculous way to do it? I mean, again, we're really clutching at straws here and really seeing what can go on. But it's true, because you look at if Libertad slip up again, if they slip up again and Guarani slip up again, they got the Sportivos, they got Trinidense and Ameliano respectively. Cerro have to host General Caballero de Juan León Mallorquin, who've been kind of a suspect team all season long. But can you just imagine if those two slip up and Cerro take advantage? Because then that means they would be right there with 35, 1 point behind Libertad. So there's a lot that can go on. Sorry, 30, it would be 34, 2 points behind, but still, man. And Libertad still have to play Olimpia. I mean, we don't have a champion yet. We don't know who's gonna win.
We have no idea if Libertad can really clinch it, Roberto, because this team has not shown their best stuff these last couple of games. They look tired. They look like they haven't been able to score. And, you're seeing a lot of their experienced players just not showing up in these big games where you need them to show up, like Lorenzo Melgarejo, who has stayed in this team most of the time. Uh, Franco, also, who was a difference maker at the beginning of this season, he's been kind of cold. He's been also kind of banged up. So he's not finding the right pieces. And let's not forget, right? I mean, Libertad sold Ruben Lescano at the beginning of the year to the Brazilian league. So they lost one of the best players. And now when you need the rotation, when you need those kind of good players out there, Libertad's not finding them. And in tight games where other coaches already know what Sergio Aquino is going to bring into these matches from the strategy point of it, I think they're getting the hang of this Libertad. They know how to go up against them, how to stop them. And Libertad have had a really rough time lately getting their wins, doing their stuff. And at the beginning of the season, it was almost easy for them to score. Now it takes them so much away from them to get a celebration, to get a goal. So I'm not feeling good about Libertad, to be honest with you, especially because I look at their calendar. I see Trinidense on the way. Trinidense has always been a problem for Libertad, for all the big teams. You see Olimpia, who they need to win at least one more big game in this calendar. If not, the fans are going to be on top of them. So that could eventually happen. I mean, Libertad can still lose at least one game, tie a couple. It could happen in this last 4 games that are coming up. And Cerro has a pretty good calendar, Roberto. If you're putting me up against Libertad and Cerro Porteño, I think Cerro can close the gap, and we might head into that last game with 3 teams going up against each other for the opportunity to win it. It could happen, Roberto.
Oh man, you're giving a lot of Cerro fans a lot of hope, aren't you? Because again, I think this is the vital week. This is the final weekend because again, you got the 4 games left, so you cut out the nitty gritty. But yeah, man, I mean, one of these teams, 2 of these teams have to slip up in order to really fall back because ultimately, if Cerro are going to win, and then you have Libertad doing, I mean, Libertad can't afford to slip up anymore. They just can't, especially now that they've qualified. They feel like maybe now their attention has to be given to the Apertura, but yeah, I don't know, man. It could go either way. I'm just really I'm locked in. I don't know what's I still think their dad's gonna win it ultimately. I just I don't know if what any Orly or Cedro Porteño are gonna have enough to really catch them. But man, this is making my prediction very hard to not stick with. Sorry, to continue to stick with them because they keep slipping up, then there might be a swing. But I don't know, man. I still think Libertad will have the chance. They can't mess up all these games. They can't choke it, can they? Surely not.
They've been choking lately. They've been choking for almost a month now. Yeah, what I said was a fluke. What I saw as a short cold, maybe it actually stood out a lot longer. So I'm not feeling good about this Libertad side right now. And I'm looking in their games, and they might lose a couple of points. Guarani is pretty much on top of them. They still got a 4 point gap between the first and second spot, but I believe they're going to at least lose at least a game. And Guarani might get a couple of ties. I think Cerro Porteño is going to be the team that's going to come through, and I believe it's gonna come down to that last game, Roberto. I think we're gonna head into that last week with all three teams having an opportunity. At least Cerro or Guarani, one of them is gonna have an opportunity. Libertad need to get these upcoming wins, especially at home where they felt better, where they've been the better team, and see if they can have that comfortable lead goal heading into those last two games. If they're under the pressure against the big teams, it's the pressure when it's put on by Cerro, Olimpia. It's a totally different atmosphere. I don't know if Libertad can handle that, to be honest, as fragile as they've looked lately.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be really interesting to see. I can't wait.
You're smiling. You're enjoying this.
And I don't want to put in more hope though. That's the thing, because Cedro can mess it up there. I say this and then boom, Cedro lose to General Caballero. I'm like, okay, great, league's over. So I don't want to put in some more hope. But again, if Libertad slip it up, then that adds up a bit more. I just, I personally as a fan, I want them to win, as they always do. But just the way that it's all happened all season long in this Cedro side, that's been kind of really inconsistent. That really hasn't found a way to do it. It's like this would be a really pure win if that's the case. But again, I'm still saying Libertad are going to win it. I'm putting it on record. You said it too, Fede. So I am going to hold my horses on anything and see what happens. But for the time being, I think Libertad are still going to be the Apertura champions for 2025.
I'm with you. I'm with you. For me, if I had to put my money on it right now with a 4 point gap, it's still on Libertad's side, especially because of the games that they have at home. They depend on themselves, and they get a couple more wins. They're gonna make it. They usually win the Apertura, and I don't think it's gonna get away from them. They've been on the sitting on the driver's seat the whole time. They've been on that first spot most of this Apertura. They pretty much deserve it. It would just be way too dramatical to lose it at this point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's gonna be really fun as we close out another great episode of Guarani Vision, and we'll see what happens here on the future weeks of the May in this whole Apertura race in the Libertadores, Sudamericana, the U20 tournament in Colombia. I'm excited as we close out another great episode of Guarani Vision for myself, Roberto Rojas, and Fede Perez. Thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.